Few places hold our collective memories quite like the cinema. In our frenetic digital world, it's nice to know there's a place where we can leave our worries behind and escape the algorithm, where emotions are allowed to play out larger than life, where laughter can ripple through a room of strangers and tension can keep us united on the edge of our seats. This month, we're turning our lens to the places and spaces where classic movies reigned and where repertory programming still gives beloved characters and iconic images a chance to light up the silver screen. Welcome to Classic Movie Club. I'm your host, Chad Knurk, the digital editor of Film Review. We've been celebrating cinema here at Film Review since 1944. Back when going to the cinema meant movie palaces, the mystique of stardom, and monoculture moments. The new book, Silver Screen's Spectacular Cinemas from Hollywood to Hong Kong, is a celebration of shared magic, honoring the movie houses, drive-ins, and theaters around the world that continue to keep the communal experience of the cinema alive. Available now from HarperCollins Publishers Pavilion, Silver Screen's journeys from icons such as Hollywood's Chinese theater and London's Prince Charles Cinema to hidden gems from far-flung corners of the globe. Our guide to these living archives is the author, journalist, Jane Crowther. Jane began her career at age 14 as a freelancer for the Yorkshire Post and has gone on to write and edit newspapers, magazines, books, and digital platforms, interviewing Hollywood stars, visiting film sets, and chronicling cinema culture from every angle. She was the editor of Total Film magazine from 2012 to 2024, where she hosted the Inside Total Film podcast. She is the editor-in-chief of the gorgeous premium print magazine Hollywood Authentic and the chair of the London Film Critics Circle. Let's join Jane as she tells us all about her new book, Silver Screens. What was the journey like to Silver Screens?
The pandemic had a lot to do with it. Like a lot of people, was really disheartened to see so many of my favorite places shut down during the pandemic and then not reopen. And, you know, one of the cinemas that's in there, the Cinerama Dome in LA, was one of those ones that sort of shut. And there's a promise that it will open. And I keep waiting to see that it will, but it hasn't yet. So it was like that sort of idea of cinemas as spaces are so important. And so I just sort of wanted to do a book that celebrated them, that not only as sort of interesting buildings in their own right, but as a really important cultural space.
Yes.
So I went to a publisher and sort of asked if they'd be interested. And they were like, yeah, because, everybody loves cinema. Most people in the world have been in a cinema and have had a lovely experience in one. It's not like doing one that's a very niche building. It's not like, something weird. Everybody has their favorite cinema and everyone has an experience of being in one. So we sort of started to work on it, and we wanted to show a wide variety of different cinemas, from outdoor ones to drive-ins to deco ones, to sort of tell the history of cinema as well as the history of sort of the 20th and 21st century, the boom of the car and the Great Depression, the impact that had on cinema and all of that sort of thing. So it was like, it's not just about cinemas and it's not just about movies, it's about us as a sort of civilization, I guess, in a cultural way.
And you could go all over the world with this book. I feel like it's a moviegoer's bucket list or travel guide.
Yeah. I mean, it's also like, in the time that I've been writing it, set jetting has become a thing. I'm sure you heard of set jetting, and so it feels like it sort of fits into that as well, that people like to go places for their gram that have a story. And and I feel like most of these places are something you'd want to put on your gram and say, this is the last remaining one of this, or this is the one where Lee Harvey Oswald got caught by the police after JFK got assassinated, or this is the one that Elvis used to like. So it's sort of unintentionally, really, but it sort of feeds into that idea that people like to travel and go to places that have a bit of a story.
To be able to go back in time, Back to the Future, I think, is one of your favorites, right? So to be able to get in a DeLorean and travel to the heyday of these cinemas, wouldn't that be something?
Wouldn't it? I mean, when I was sort of researching some of the big ones, I mean, and also just when you think how many people these used to seat, some of the
Yeah.
really big whoppers, like the Paramount or even the Michigan Theatre that's now a car park in Detroit,
Yeah.
they were just huge with water fountains and chandeliers and still some of them are beautiful to look at. The Paramount is particularly a gorgeous thing. But yeah, I would love to go back and see it in the heyday when thousands of people are sitting down for a movie.
Yeah.
It would be quite a thing.
Yeah, it would, with the big lavish movie palaces. And,
Yeah,
so many of those got chopped down too. To see them restored would be something, chopped down to
yeah,
multiple auditoriums. And
yeah, yeah. When there is still a single screen, and some of them still are. Some of them still have that, which, yeah, as you say, is really quite unique now.
so many of them have also kind of transformed into performing arts venues, which is great that we still
Yeah,
have the spaces, but to see movies in some of these places.
yeah, and also the way that they used to sort of have like pre-film shows. Some of
Yeah.
them, like the Capitan and the Egyptian, used to have like full-on shows that happened.
Mm.
It would have been amazing, and to see something like Hell's Angels premiere at the Chinese theatre that had a full-on dogfight, full-scale dogfight,
Yeah.
biplanes hanging over the place. It's just like the scale on which people did things in those days was epic.
What were some of the histories that were particularly fascinating to you or resonated with you?
I really love the Michigan Theatre in Detroit, just because that is so interesting that it was built when Detroit was booming because of the car industry. And it was built on the site where Ford had his first workshop. So cars brought that to life. And then ultimately, cars destroyed that because
Right.
people stopped going to the cinema in town. They started going to the multiplexes, etc. And now it's a car park. So I love the fact that the automobile is part of that story from beginning
Mm.
to end. And they're working on it actually. Since I wrote the book, they're actually working on it to sort of restore it a little bit.
Oh, wow.
And they're doing things with it because they realize actually that's such a huge piece of Detroit history.
Mm.
Motor City's start and end there. So yes, I love that one. I mean, I'm a big Elvis fan, so I really enjoy going
Mm.
to the Elvis theater in Memphis, which I think is just really interesting as well that he's one of the 20th century's biggest entertainers, and he has this huge mansion that has a TV room and he can watch films there. But he also recognizes that going to a cinema and an auditorium with other people and having that darkened atmosphere and that sort of reverence for what you're about to watch on screen is something special that you cannot get at home. So he goes down, you know, 7 miles from his house with all of his mates, the Memphis Mafia, to watch films from midnight right through to dawn, because he loves the experience of a cinema as well. So I love that idea as well. There's so many that have just, and things like the Winter Garden and Elgin Theatre in Toronto, that's
Mm.
obviously a big part of the Toronto International Film Festival now, and loads of films shown there. But it's the last remaining stacked theatre in the world. These Edwardian theatres that used to have one theatre below and one theatre above, and they're also part of that sort of atmospheric thing. One of them is like a fairy tale wood, which you just don't see nowadays, and it has four ghosts. I mean, what's not to love about a cinema with four ghosts?
There are so many stories about cinemas being haunted, and that's so much fun and part of the history too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Theatres are always haunted, so why not cinema?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. That's right. With some of these in the book, what are some of your favorites that you've been to that you love
Mm.
watching movies at?
Yeah, I mean, I love Chinese theatre in LA, because to me, as a girl from Yorkshire in the UK, that was always the ultimate
Mm.
cinema. It's a landmark building in its own right. It's probably the most famous cinema in the world. I think everybody knows that cinema.
Yeah.
And it's been in so many films itself, an absolute ton. So when I finally got to go to LA, the thing I had to do was go to put my hands in all the handprints outside, but to go and see a film in there. So I love that one. Um, In the UK, I love the BFI for the similar reason that the London Film Festival runs out of there, and it's got a lot of history to it as well. There's one near my hometown, the Hyde Park Picture House in Leeds, which still has gas lamps and is just a delightful place. It's, I think, the last one in the world that still has gas lamps and they still
Mm.
light it. And when they were refitting it, they had so much problems, obviously, putting gas into a public space. But they did it because it's such a unique thing. And the light in there is a particular kind of light because of that.
So cool.
And yeah, and I love Cinerama Dome because it's again such a sort of ridiculous thing. It looks like a golf ball.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and when you used to go there, the staff were so enthusiastic at that cinema. But also ones like, I love the sort of cultural imprint of places like the Castro Theatre in San Francisco, which is so part of sort of the LGBTQ community, and Harvey Milk being so integral to that space as well, and that it's still a massive focal landmark point in that community and in that neighborhood. So there's too many. I love them all. They're all chosen because I
Yeah.
love them, but I haven't been to all of them. Obviously, there are some that I haven't been to that I have on my bucket list. So the one in Moscow, obviously quite tricky to get to Moscow at the moment, but I would love go there where Battleship Potemkin was shown, and and the history that's part of that as well. And ones in sort of Scandinavia that I haven't been to, the Kutu and various other ones that are in sort of beautiful, bleak, snowy sort of snowscapes. I'd love to go to those. I think that can't be anything more lovely than seeing a film in the dark and going out and it being all snowy and beautiful outside. So yeah,
How did you narrow down your list? I'm sure that there are some that didn't make the cut.
loads. And there, and every time anyone picks up the book and opens it, they're like, but why is this not in? The truth is, like, it would be several volumes if
Right.
we did everyone. There's so many cinemas. Maybe there'll be volume two, who knows?
Yeah.
But the criteria was to try to find ones that had a story in themselves. They weren't just a pretty loved for a cinema. They were distinct and remarkable in their own right for various reasons. So it was just a case of sort of finding ones with the stories I liked the best.
Tarantino does come up a lot. He not
He
only,
does.
in his cinemas, but also on some of the marquees and the images I noticed in there too. Was that intentional? Was that circumstance?
It wasn't, but it was a thing that he just kept turning up. So obviously he's a huge cinema nerd.
Yeah.
He has two in LA,
Mm.
and he's also been really instrumental in sort of encouraging other people in restoring and keeping other cinemas alive. So he turns up, in Australia, where people have brought old Grand Dame cinemas back to life. And he does turn up on marquees because I guess people love to see his film when they're doing sort of programming. So yeah, it was not intentional at all, but I think him and Martin Scorsese and loads of filmmakers, Edgar Wright. There's lots of
Yeah.
directors that are as passionate about cinema, the actual act of going to it, as well as the art form, as they are of making their own works of art. So they'd all crop up quite a bit. Yeah, I mean, like Christopher Nolan, he's a big proponent of the theatrical experience. So I hope that Christopher Nolan would approve of this book, that
Yeah.
it's encouraging people to actually buy a ticket and go and see
Yeah.
something in a cinema, because that's the other thing. I mean, I'm in a privileged position, having been a film critic for a number of years and a film editor of Total Film magazine, that I've been in a very privileged position to see films a lot of the time theatrically in really nice screening rooms with great sound, great seats, and seeing it as the director intended.
Mm.
And as we've sort of morphed more into streaming and watching stuff on our phone, we kind of get away from that idea of going to the cinema and seeing something as a community and as a director intended. And I was very lucky enough with Nolan to have sat in on his sound mix for Dunkirk
Mm.
when he was doing that, and watching the absolute specificity that he puts into
Mm.
his sound, where it lands, where it actually lands in a room, where it is in a sound, in a track, in a mix, how it emotionally moves an audience. So I don't think he would want us to be watching his films. I know he wouldn't want us to be watching
Yeah.
his films on an iPhone. And so yeah, I think directors crop up so much in this book because the theatrical experience is how they want people to view their work.
Hmm. And I think a lot of people forget what it's like to be in a packed audience and have that
Mm.
visceral, ephemeral reaction in the air.
Yeah.
It does do something to you that you can't get when you're just sitting at home.
Yeah, I mean, when you watch a, you know, something scary and everyone jumps at the same time and sort of laughs a little bit nervously,
Yeah.
that's a delightful thing. Or when you're watching a film and you're sniveling away and everyone else is like wiping away their tears and you can hear the tissue coming out, or
Yeah.
you know, or even just, you know, the wow factor of a big twist. You know, I remember, you know, when I saw No Time to Die at the premiere of
Mm.
in London, and when Bond actually died, spoiler, to see that with a group of people where everybody goes, oh no, you're like,
Yeah.
no way. It makes it, you get like goosebumps because it's
Yeah.
a shared experience, it's a communal experience, and I think it's more emotionally impactful than if you're doing it on your own in your lounge.
Yeah. Absolutely. What were some of your foundational early movie going memories?
I mean, my first film that I can sort, I probably went to more before this, but was a reissue of Snow White, the Disney film.
Mm.
And it was the first time I really remember being in the dark in the cinema. And when she goes into the forest and the eyes are all sort of peeping out of the forest, and it was so frightening and thrilling because I was in that darkened space and with other people. I remember that being a really sort of truly magical experience.
Yeah.
Um, and then E.T., just the emotional wallop of that, and watching a film that truly sort of gut punches you and then takes you to another emotional place in the final reel. That was a big one. So many, you know, I remember seeing Point Break for the first time and being just amazed by not only the cinematography of the surfing, but that amazing scene that Catherine Bigelow does. That's the foot chase, and it's completely, you know, you're in it. That was massive to me. Moulin Rouge, you know, the ridiculous just stuff flying at you of Baz Luhrmann and what you could do with that imagination, and his reverence for the red curtain rising,
Mm.
with Strictly Ballroom and with all of those sort of the red curtain trilogy.
Mm.
That idea of being at a show, was really formative as well.
Your next book, growing up kind of wanting to be on location, seeing film
Yeah.
shot, it seems fitting that you're looking at film history through film locations.
Yeah, I mean, I used to read lots of film magazines as a kid, and the idea of being on a film set was so magical to me, like to actually see how they did it. And then in my job, I actually got to do that a lot, and
Mm-hmm.
it was a pinch me moment every time. But for the longest time, I've always wanted to try to, I don't know, you know when you see a film and you get a really lovely feeling about it and a sense that you want to step inside it. I've
Mm.
always sort of responded to that by going to the places that it's set or filmed, because then you can have a little piece of that experience. You can't actually step inside the film, but you can go to Crema in Italy and
Yeah.
pretend you're in Call Me by Your Name and cycle around on bikes. Have done it. You
I
can go
love
to
that.
Vienna and wander around like Jesse, and Celine. All of those sort of things. I went to Hotel del Coronado as a kid with, I begged my parents, please can we go there? So, you know, when I did that trip to LA and I went to the Chinese theater, we drove down to Hotel del Coronado because I loved Some Like It Hot.
Yes.
And it's still there. So I've been set jetting without knowing it my entire life.
Mm.
And so I hope that there must be other people that do this, and want to get in a film but can't, and that this is the closest thing you can to do that.
Do you know all of the cinemas in your area? As Season 2 of Classic Movie Club comes to a close, I want to encourage you to seek out the historic places and community spaces showing repertory programming in your area. There's nothing quite like seeing a classic movie on the silver screen. That's our show. We hope you enjoyed the journey. My thanks again to Jane Crowther. You can learn more about Jane and her new book, Silver Screens, in our show notes. That also brings us to the end of Season 2 of Classic Movie Club. This season, we talked to Film Masters founder Phil Hopkins, author and journalist Esther Zuckerman, the staff of Martha's Vineyard Museum, costume collector Greg Schreiner, filmmaker Laurent Bouzereau, costume collector Larry McQueen and co-author Colleen Scott, Hollywood Forever Cemetery tour guide Carrie Bible, Oscar-winning makeup effects artist Howard Berger, and film journalist Marshall Julius, as well as author and journalist Jane Crowther. If you like what we do, please consider becoming a member of Classic Movie Club. Your support will help us return for another season and continue the legacy of film review. Check out our show notes to learn more about sponsorship opportunities for future episodes and seasons. And don't forget to subscribe, like, review, and please share the podcast with all of your film friends. We invite you back next season for another adventure, but until then, here's looking at you, kid.